Thanks to everybody for being here today. As I think most of you know, but if not, let me make it official. Bondilyn joined WAV Group recently to run our marketing agency. She's got 20 plus years of experience doing all kinds of digital marketing and all kinds of other things. She actually created a digital marketing software platform because she didn't see what she needed out there. So she actually built it. So she sat in the seat of being the vendor. We all know how fun it can be sometimes. She's also the former CMO from Elm Street. So many of you, I'm sure, know them. Robert Luna, hello. We know that you know where that is. And she also has done fractional CMO services and is doing that at the moment for many companies. So she's got a terrific background. I don't know if all of you know, but I actually am a marketing person too. By history, I was a senior VP of marketing at Fisher Price. So it's always near and dear to my heart to see great storytelling, great branding, great logo development, all of that. And so we're going to just have a conversation today. We've asked each of you in advance, and we're going to ask you again to give us your thoughts about the things you're struggling with right now. But I'm going to turn it over to Bondilyn to talk about the agenda, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so thank you to everybody who sent us your questions, challenges, and concerns ahead of time. We're looking for some more feedback though. So everybody that is out there, I've got a couple of questions, and in your chat window, you can message just Marilyn and I directly, right? So the host and panelists, anything that you submit, any challenges or concerns that you have are 100% confidential with us. We're not going to, share any company names or anything, but we do want to address those for you. So a couple of things that I want to get some feedback on. What specific sales and marketing challenges are you currently facing with your MLS association and broker clients? So just go ahead and put that in the chat to us. Are you struggling with, the current state of the market, maybe budgetary constrictions, customer adoption, appointment scheduling? Like, just give us some feedback on what your organization, your sales and marketing teams are currently struggling with, and put that in the chat for us.
And also, we do have some MLS marketing leaders on the call as well. So you guys can feel free to share too of what challenges, if anything, you're facing with either working with technology companies or with working to, get adoption and engagement with the tools that you're offering to your customers today.
Yeah. So we want to hear from you, because that's how we're going to shape our conversation over the next hour. So there's a reason why you're here. Let us know what that is, and we'll make sure that we address it. Another thing is, we're just starting out Q2 of the year, right? So let's look back over your Q1 performance. So you came into 2023 with your, sales projections. How has 2023 performed for you? Has it outperformed? Are you pretty much on par where you expected to be heading into Q2, or are you dealing with underperformance? And if so, if you're dealing with underperformance, then you should be giving us some challenges or questions that, that you're struggling with. And I see a bunch of people popping in and a bunch of good stuff. So thank you. So we'll just take just a minute. Keep putting your questions in. Okay. So we're going to kick off next. We're going to talk about just some of the fundamental challenges that we see and the needs that we see across MLS association and brokerages. We're going to redefine or define the role of marketing in your organization and how that is symbiotic and relates to your sales process. We're going to address what we typically see as the four fatal marketing flaws of the tech companies that we work with. And then we're going to actually take the time and address all of those questions and concerns and challenges that you're feeding us right now. So we've got a lot that we're going to cover. I see questions still coming in. This is wonderful. Thank you all. But Marilyn, let's go ahead while people are, posing their challenges. I want to pose this to you, because we deal with MLSs and associations and brokerages all across the nation. We have our fingers in a little bit of everything. What are some of the fundamental, challenges and needs that our partners are currently facing with the 2023 market?
Well, there's so many things. I mean, some of them are universal and some are tougher this year than they've been in other years. We're going to get into some of the details of these in a second, but someone mentioned here that I saw one of the questions that they put us in a bucket, right? There's so many technology companies out there, and there are so many, frankly, that yet haven't quite figured out how to differentiate their story from others, right? So it's like, how do I help people understand truly the differentiation that I have? And that starts with product, which is one of the 4 Ps, which we'll look at in a minute. And it goes all the way through to what we talk about, how we support our customers, how we train them. There's a myriad of things where it can break down, right? So that's one of the things I would think we'll talk more about too, about talking about the why of your product and not the what and the how. People tend to a lot of times either get too text heavy, and we're going to look at this. Actually, Bondilyn's going to send you some examples afterward, where we're not necessarily getting to why should someone pay attention. Everybody's overwhelmed. We were just laughing before this call. We get up in the morning, the gun goes off, and we don't stop until 6 o'clock every night, right? And we're all like that. So what are we doing to help people break through, to help them understand why they should pay attention to what we're saying? We can't assume that just because we think it's amazing, that they all think it's amazing, or if we just show them it's feature, that's that meaningful. It's not the right way to tell the story. And one other one I think is a little bit of blindness to the market has shifted. Obviously, we're all well aware of it, and we're all finding it in our own P&Ls and budgets. But has our messaging shifted? Have we built an empathy about what a brokerage especially is going through right now, what an agent who was busier than busy and now has nothing to sell and is really worried how they're going to pay their mortgage next month? Are we talking to what's important to them? And are we adjusting our story in a way that really matters and that they're going to hear us, right? That's at the end of the day. I mean, how many times have we heard the expression realtors don't read, right? And yes, of course, we're all busy and we're not necessarily reading as much as we should, but I think that's a cop-out. I think they read what they think is important to them and what they think will actually help them. And that's what we all have to figure out, is how do we crack that code, that we bring them something that's meaningful enough that it really matters.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Wow. Okay. Thank you to everybody for all of the questions and concerns. We will systematically work through those and we will tackle all of them. So let's talk about like the role of marketing, because marketing it's a very, very broad term. And so many times when I'm talking to our different, tech partners in the space, they have a very different idea of what marketing is. And I think a lot of people that want to work in marketing think it's, I want to be a social media manager and I want to create really cool posts and have great conversations online. And fundamentally, marketing is so much bigger and so much more important inside of your organization. So Marilyn, we're a big fan of the 4 Ps. Why don't you talk to me about the 4 Ps a little bit, and then I'll talk about the difference between sales and marketing and our relationship together.
So at the risk of sounding like a marketing professor from 1974, I am going to begin here, because one of the things that I noticed, as I said, I came from the world of Fisher Price and packaged goods, and we're consumer. That's what it all mattered, right? What I noticed a lot of times is that the word marketing was being thrown or bantered around in ways that I don't consider it to truly be marketing, right? So sometimes when you talk to a broker or a brokerage, they think it's about, great listing presentations and great flyers, which it is. That is one component, but it is such one of the small components, right? Sometimes people think that means a new brand and a new logo. Again, it does mean that, but it means so much more than that, right? And the true way to look at marketing, and I think Bondilyn, you'd 100% agree, is that if marketing is done correctly, it does 2 things. Number one, it outlines growth strategies that match the corporate strategy about where we're trying to go. And secondly, is it completely supports the sales process in hoping to get to that profitability number, right? So in the most dangerous way, marketing is not just pretty pictures. And I do believe some people in this industry think that. When I was senior VP of marketing at Fisher Price, we set the tone for, we'd get corporate growth objectives from Mattel, who owned us. And from there, we would say, okay, we've got all these different product lines, all these different customers to serve. How are we going to hit that number? And how are we going to hit that number? Not only hit the top line, but how are we going to hit the bottom line number, right? So marketing has to be considerate of all of those things. So it starts, one of the guys I worked with at Fisher Price would always say, build great product and the rest will follow. And he's right. If any of you have used Fisher Price products, I'm sure you probably tripped over them at 2 a.m. sometimes. You know that it all came from that. Without a high quality product, a brand like Fisher Price, which is, by the way, the 4th most trusted brand in the entire world, doesn't happen unless you start with something that's amazing. In our case, what is that product? It can be technology, it can be service, it can be training, it can be all of the above, right? And support. Then price, obviously that's key too. And we hear a lot, and some of the questions are kind of circling around this. Many people come to WAV Group and they say, oh, I've got this great product for an MLS. I'm like, that's great. How much is it? Oh, it's $30 per agent per month. I'm like, yeah, that's not a great product for an MLS. They're never going to buy it at that price. So there's not a sensitivity of the scope in which, where does your product fit in within the overall product mix? How important is it relative to other things that particular group might have already purchased? Does it displace something? Does it replace something? Does it enhance something? All of that has to be considered when you talk about price. So again, it's not just pretty pictures and flyers. There's a lot more to it, right? And then promotion. I mean, there's a million different ways to talk about that, from television to radio to social media to public relations to literally promotional strategies, buy 2 get 1 free, to buy it tomorrow and get 10% off, all of that stuff. All of those things come in. And frankly, in real estate, I think we do a fair amount with what I would consider more traditional promotion, like email blasts and things like that. But we don't really fully deploy all of the types of promotional vehicles that are out there. And social media and even regular media, television and streaming services and things like that, they continue to evolve. And I don't think we fully embrace all of the ways that we could potentially leverage that stuff. And then place, of course, that's really important too. And we get there's actually a question about this we'll talk about later of, how do I know if I should sell this into a market through the brokerage community versus the MLS versus an association? Or is there some mix of those things? And how do they work together? And is there a premium I can sell to the MLS that then becomes an upsell to brokers? There's so many different ways to look at those kinds of, different ways to talk about that. In market coverage, of course, in our market, real estate data makes a big difference, right? Some tools, you can't use them unless you have that data. But sometimes people try to go to 25 markets across the country at once and then recognize that is not an easy thing to do, to ingest all those different data sets, right? So there's really 4 components to it. It isn't just, again, pretty pictures. It isn't just we launch a product once and build it and they will come. That doesn't always happen, and mostly doesn't happen. So you've got to think about all 4 of those components when you put together your flow marketing campaign.
Yeah. And Deborah, thank you for your feedback. So the 4 P's is, foundational, and you are correct. There is also the 7P mentality where you add people, process, and physical evidence. And, from marketing, I've always viewed marketing as the heart and soul of your organization. Marketing is really who helps, to set and define and reinforce the culture, both internally. And I always think too, like, as the head of marketing, my job is not just to, create a narrative with the prospective audience and with our active clients, but I also look internally, like how do we support the cultural representation of the organization across your staff, your stakeholders, your investors. You have to think about all of these different audiences and what the role of your organization and how you, interact and service each other comes together. And it's really important, particularly now that we're in more virtual style environments. We're engaging a lot more in online communities, not necessarily always face to face. We really have to think about all of those, the positioning of our organization across a much, much larger and broader ecosystem. And then, there's also, like, with marketing, I mean, obviously it's about generating business opportunities and driving profitability. The sales team needs to be your number one friend. And, when I'm working with a tech company, the head of sales is the first person I'm talking to every single morning, and they're the last person I'm talking to every single night. Because marketing is there to fuel that sales process. All the money that we're spending on our marketing initiatives ultimately needs to equate to dollars back into that company. And we need to make sure that we have a really strategic and intelligent, workflow and narrative running across all of that, from the marketing, the front end marketing, to the sales process, to the customer service experience, to even, once a client has exited us, and what their journey looks like on the outside. So there's a lot that goes into marketing.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a good lead into our next topic, which is managing the entire customer journey. That is a place where many times we see people fall down, where one group of people, and I'll pick on developers for a minute, they tend to manage the back end of the process, and they speak completely differently than marketing folks. So Bondilyn, why don't you talk about some of the things I know you've done at some of the companies you've worked with to make a consistent journey and to make it feel like it's the same company all the way through and all the way back around again, and getting them to stay with us because they believe we're with them the entire time.
Yeah, and because one of the things we're definitely going to be talking about is agent adoption issues and churn issues, right? And I see a lot of comments coming in on that. And, it's really important that you have a really comprehensive marketing funnel. And I love this graphic. I did not create this graphic, but this is one that I really, really love, because this touches on all of the different parts and pieces of what a customer journey is. And you notice in the middle, that's when we actually convert them into that paid customer. But notice that's really only about the halfway point, right? We've got a lot of other activities because we have to continue to support them. We have to onboard them. We have to work towards, maintaining their energy and enthusiasm around the product. We have to make sure that we deliver on all of those marketing and sales promises that we made. We need to drive them into advocacy. We need to get them to be a brand ambassador, and we need to create stickiness for them. And so when you're developing and working with your, from a marketing and sales and support approach, you have to have a really consistent customer voice through that entire journey, and make sure that you're managing expectations along that entire journey. And what I see with a lot of tech companies is they're so focused, marketing will just be focused on top of funnel. And now that it's in the sales funnel, I'm stepping back and I'm back over here again. And now the sales team is operating in their own individual silo, and they might have a completely different voice, a different set of value propositions to which they're speaking. And then once they've made that conversion, they're off to chase the next. And now customer service is taking over. And I'm sure many of you are sitting out there going, yes, this is exactly reflective of my organization. We're operating in all of these individual, little silos. And so it's really important, particularly when you want to, approach MLS and associations and brokerages, and you want them to invest and adopt your product or services. You want them to endorse and support that internally. If you can't define and have a consistent voice of what your experience is going to be like, how can you expect your MLS association and brokerage partners to have any idea about what your overarching experience is going to be like for their members and their agents?
Yeah, we see it so many times where, and you've probably all experienced this, not necessarily just with real estate technology, you're somewhere down and you're already engaged, and you ask a question and you get this gobbledygook, sort of looks like a 404 error kind of language that comes back to you, and you're like, what is that? It doesn't make you want to continue. And there's a lot of great products. In fact, we were just talking to one earlier today where there's a lot of accountability built in, and abilities to continue to learn more and to continue to go deeper and continue to get more excited about what you're doing. So that and done in bite-sized chunks, right? And also spoken really importantly in realtor speak, right? So as soon as you start to use any words that are more vernacular to your own company and aren't talking about the sales process, you're starting to lose the audience, right? You always have to remember the bulk of the people in our business didn't come from technology. kind of, they think of tech as a means to an end, not the end, right? They didn't grow up with this. They didn't wake up in the morning, oh, please let me learn 5 new things to do with technology today. So when you talk to them about how it relates to what they do, it makes it for a better story, and you're going to get them to pay attention more.
That's awesome. So that kind of leads into our fatal flaw number 2. And every one of you out there that has ever worked with me or has heard me talk about this, I absolutely loathe feature vomit. And I know, and I get it, guys, you have invested so heavily in your product, in your tech stack, and it is amazing. And it does all these really, really amazing things and has all these wonderful bells and whistles, but you cannot vomit those features all over everybody. Do not sell the tech. We need to actually speak to the challenges and the needs of our audience. We need to focus on the benefits, and you need to be better storytellers. And if you can be a better storyteller, the MLS, one of our questions is, why does it take so long for MLS and associations to make a decision to adopt technology? It's because you're not demonstrating what that customer journey is going to look like. You're not telling a compelling enough story that is going to help them understand how you are serving fundamental needs and challenges of their membership base. And so, because you're just giving them a list of features and they see that stuff all day long. So I encourage everybody to become a much better storyteller, tell relatable stories. The MLS should look at your sales and marketing initiatives and say, you know what? This solution was created specifically to speak to my members. My members are raising their hand. They have this challenge. They have this frustration. They have these concerns. This is what's keeping them awake at night. And this is how this product is actually going to solve for that. And you need to do that in an authentic and honest way. You need to have a personal voice to your company, and feature vomit is never, ever going to do that for you.
Yeah, it's like if you don't start with the why, the how is irrelevant. The end of the day, whoever we are, we all feel like we have too much tech in our business as it is, right? So what are you bringing me? And you have to do it, the old classic elevator pitch, right? Give me 1 sentence or less that tells me why you're going to make me more successful in some way. Help me retain clients forever. Help me generate more leads. Help me convert those leads. Help me secure listing presentations that are impossible to get right now. Whatever it is, right? But you got to start with one of those benefits. Otherwise, they're not going to pay attention. And we see a lot of that. And a lot of quote training videos start with the push the button, push the button, push the button, push the button. They don't start with why I should push any of these buttons to begin with.
Exactly. Marketing is really more about sociology and psychology versus technology. I'll say that again.
I like that.
Marketing is more about sociology and psychology, not technology.
I love that.
Where we've had a lot of success working with, and I know we've got some wonderful MLS partners that are joining us today, and I hope you're all going to sit and nod your heads yes with this. As a tech vendor, you do not want to go into an MLS and take an hour or 90 minutes of the member's time and just give them one big giant sales pitch and take them through all the features and all the things that your product can do. Your MLS and association partners and your brokerage partners are really looking for educational opportunities. And so I'm like, don't send in a sales rep, send in your educational field team, send in your national business, consultants. Go in with a very educational approach. Like if you're a CRM, don't go in and, talk about all the features in your CRM, because CRM is a dirty word, right? Go in and educate. What does your CRM help people do? It helps them to manage their time more efficiently. It helps them to set up, strategic and intelligent and thoughtful lead nurturing workflows. If you could walk into an MLS and say, we're going to come in, we have an amazing educational program that we're going to come in, we're going to teach all of your members how to members to better manage their time, to nurture leads and automate a lot of those processes, streamline their day-to-day task functions so that they can focus more efficiently on what is important to them. If you're a social media company, right? Go in, don't go in and say, hey, look, we help connect you to Facebook and TikTok and and all of these things. Go in and say, you know what, we're going to teach your members how to create amazing content that is going to help them stand out inside a very, very noisy social media marketplace.
Exactly.
If you're a data company, go in and educate, how can you utilize the data that you serve to create meaningful, community snapshots that help agents better promote the communities and areas that they farm and serve. So it's flipping the switch. You're not necessarily, don't walk in with a sales hat on, walk in with an educational hat on. And obviously what you're educating on is going to link back to all of the benefits and features that you offer within your platform. And then you can, turn to that. But the education is how you're going to get in, and you're going to tell stories, and you're going to showcase, success stories of people who you've made the hero. So if you're looking at that relatable timeline, what are the challenges? What are the obstacles these people have? Who's the hero in your story? How can you showcase, a really positive, that happy ending, that positive outcome? And then how does that correlate to what you are selling in terms of products and services?
And the letting a customer tell the story is so powerful for a lot of reasons, not the least of which it doesn't sound so self-serving, because it isn't. Secondly, that customer will be with you forever. And they will actually help promote your story in a way that you can't do as your own company. So there's so many ways to leverage the partnerships that you have to let other people tell your story, which can be really meaningful too. And it's great when I saw a board member one day pitch a small component of an MLS product that was out there, and he put it in totally relevant use case of something every board member in the room could relate to, and he did it, and there was no tech words, it was nothing fancy. He's like, when I'm in this situation, I use this tool to do this, and everyone in the room, most of which had not even tried the product yet, were like, oh my God, that's great. Where do I get trained? Right. So sometimes it can be the overall benefit. Sometimes it can be just that killer app too. It can be that one thing that really helps you break apart from others. But again, framed around actual sales process, not things that people in the lab have figured out, but people that are actually selling they're going to tell the story better than we could ever tell it, because it's going to be relatable to other people that sell stuff.
Well, and peer-to-peer is an amazing sales vehicle for you.
Yep.
And so I'm going to send everybody a follow-up email on the backside of today's webinar. And I have 3 different video examples I'm going to show you. And they're all commercials for tech companies. They're tech companies that we all are aware of. They don't necessarily work inside of our space, but we utilize their technology. I'll tell you that a lot of us do. But there's 3 different examples I'm going to send you. And one is an example very well executed, but it's very heavily feature focused. And the second video I'm going to send you is a similar type company, but they really focused on sort of more of a storytelling aspect to demonstrate their features and their benefit, their value proposition. And I want you to watch those 2 videos at your leisure, and I want you, to look at them, and I'm going to ask you a few questions in that email. Which one of those products really resonates with you? What do you walk away with learning about each of those products on the backside of those commercials? And then I'm going to send you a third one that is actually Zendesk. And they took a really, really unique approach to some of their marketing and advertising a couple of years ago, where they don't even show you elements inside of their interface. They have a really unique and strategic way that they actually talk about their value proposition. So I'm going to send those videos. I wish that we could have shared them live here, but that would give it, we'd take up another 6 minutes of our conversation, and we don't have that. So, but you will get those in an email from me, and I'm going to have some strategic talking points for each of you about what I like around each one of those. So storytelling is huge. I always love a good story. All right. Oh God, yeah, we've got to talk, you know what, it's time, fatal flaw number 3. We got to talk money, we got to talk budgets, we got to talk spreadsheets, we got to talk ROI, we've got to talk total addressable markets. Let's dig in, Marilyn, we got to do it.
All right, do we have, nobody likes to talk about budgets. Well, I'm going to start with just at the higher level, and then we're going to jump into some of those details. But one of the things that we're seeing a lot of right now, and this is happening across the board, we're seeing layoffs, we're seeing a lot of things, right? And our industry, not like many others, tends to go from one extreme to the other, right? So during COVID, a lot of people were spending money because they had to online because they had no other way to get to people, right? Then the market got so hot, they were spending lots of money because they had lots of business coming in. And of course, now the business is slower. I would suggest to all of you, one of the things that we learned a lot when I was doing strategic planning at Fisher Price is take a longer view of your market potential and your market growth. So if you look at your business over a 5, 10, 15, 20, we went back as far as 30 years. Some of you haven't been around that long. So as long as you've been far back, as long as you can get data, go back and look and see what your growth projections really look like. And try to normalize the fact that no, we're not going to see March 22 anytime soon. None of us are. And frankly, I think some people are glad because they were very worn out. They were tired. They needed a little break, right? But try to get some balance back in the thought process. And here's a really important thing, and a good way to, in addition to the numbers we're going to talk about in a second, to think about it, right? If you are somebody that's in a part of the market where you feel like you have a strong leadership position, or you have a potential to have a strong leadership position, or you have a unique product that you think can really take on a leadership position, this is the time to do it. Why is this the time to do it? Because everyone else is yinning, you should be yanging, right? If everyone else is pulling back, and if your company's strong enough, it has enough cash flow to support it, this is the time to lean in. This is the time where you can gain market share because many others are pulling back. So it's counterintuitive to what goes on, but I can tell you the companies that win are the ones that in times like this, I'll give you a perfect example. We launched RE technology in 2009-10. Everyone thought we were insane. Why are you launching a business right now? It's talking about technology. No one wants technology. The world's ending. Guess what? 13 years later, we're still here and we're thriving. And because we took advantage of that moment. And I was just speaking at the Leading Real Estate Companies of the World conference, a good analogy. 2 of the largest brokers in that group, I said, so what are you doing? You're leaders, right? Because that's why you're in the group called Leading. What are you doing to take advantage of it? And they said, we are leaning in, we're spending more, we're buying companies, we're doing everything we can because we have that position, or we believe we can have an even stronger position. So first thing is mindset. Like, this is not the time to cut budgets. Obviously, at some level, you have to still be cognizant of profitability, but not the time to constrict and be afraid. And that's what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah. So, and Marilyn, I think it's interesting because we're not just seeing that inside of tech companies, right? But look at who you're servicing, the MLS association and the brokers, right? And so, we see a lot of this like doom and gloom, right? Because it's clickbait. So we've got, all the media outlets out there that are just, feeding us doom and gloom. And we tend to sacrifice the long-term vision of what we're trying to accomplish as an organization for, immediate or short-term perceived gain. And I'll use an example. So when the pandemic actually hit, I had a large brokerage that I was working with, and they had an amazing administrative support staff. And that was a really big attractor. They had, over like 820 agents within their organization, very, very successful. And they literally freaked out when the pandemic hit. And what they did is they had this knee-jerk reaction and they started cutting all of their administrative roles. As we all know, personnel are expensive. And that's a really easy way to clear, out those spreadsheets and make EBITDA a lot more attractive. And so they started just mass cutting their administrative staff, their transaction coordinators, all kinds of stuff. And it was really backfired on them because the agents were there because they relied very heavily, on those support and services. And as those disappeared, those agents started looking elsewhere, and that organization lost 20% of their agents over a 12-month period of time.
Wow.
20% of their agents. And it was just really a crazy knee-jerk reaction. And I saw a lot of that with tech companies too. and so we have this, you have amazing personnel, you've got amazing, field sales teams and things like that. And then you're running out and you're just slashing and burning because you need to make your EBITDA. And then 6 months later, you're rebuilding from scratch again in a lot of ways. And so I think it's really important, to be really thoughtful. And that's why, Marilyn, when you said, looking back, be able to reevaluate, reforecast, recalibrate your budgets based on what is currently happening in the market. And we need to look at our historical data year over year and take that into consideration, because that's really going to help us not make those knee-jerk reactions that could affect our long-term gain in the market. And I love your example of RE Tech, right? You guys, leaned in aggressively at a time when people were pulling back, and you guys gained incredible market share during that time.
Absolutely.
So another thing I want to talk about with budgets, because sales and marketing budgets are always the first to get slashed. I know we've got a lot of C-suiters on this call today, and I want to speak, former recovering C-suiter myself. I want to speak, to why the sales and marketing budgets have a tendency to get cut. So for all of you marketing people and sales leads that are out there, ultimately, the money out that you spend on sales and marketing initiatives needs to equate to money in, and marketing needs to be directly tied to your ROI. And this is why I said, marketing and sales, you guys are best friends. I would always talk to my VP of sales first thing in the morning, last thing at night, because I needed to understand what was happening inside of that sales environment. And then this is an example of just a dashboard, an at-a-glance dashboard. Your C-suite, your stakeholders, your investors, you need to draw direct correlation to what you're spending money on and how that translates into MRR, on your SaaS models. And I think there's such a disconnect there. If you, from a marketing standpoint, are operating in your silo, sales is in their silo, and support that retention and that churn, that attrition is happening over here, and you're not connecting the dots across all of that, you have fundamental problems. And of course, your budgets are going to get cut because you cannot tie direct ROI back to your spend.
Absolutely. And I can tell you from RE Technology, because we work with many, many technology companies there, the most sophisticated, and you know who you are, some of you are on the call today, always do that, right? And the great news about digital and so many of the things that we do today, it's a lot easier to tie. And, the old days when you had TV and print, you throw out some, a bunch of GRPs and hope for the best. You never really knew what it was doing. Now there's a direct correlation, but it's again, that mindset that marketing is not pretty pictures. Marketing is driving the profitability of the company, and every one of its goals and strategies has to tie back to what are the corporate goals. If they don't, if there's a disconnect between the two, it's just a matter of time before marketing will become a nice to have and it's going to go away.
Yeah, it's all about key performance indicators, right? The KPIs. And so and I'm working with a client right now, right? We're looking at every single marketing channel that we're spending money on. And we have very strategic KPIs that are related to all of those marketing channels. Some of them, it's about organic, right? So because I'm looking at, okay, I'm spending money on this personnel over here. I'm, this social media manager. And, yes, I have my pay per click budgets, but there's also how do I justify the existence of, this person on my payroll? And I have to be able to tie the actions that they do to very specific growth initiatives and KPIs within the organization. And so there's a lot of dots that we have to connect, and it blows me away at how difficult that can be for tech companies, to connect all of those dots. And your tech companies, for God's sakes, there's so much data. We play with data all day long, but yet we're like the cobbler kid that doesn't wear any shoes. We can't evaluate our own data the way that we go out and tell our MLS and association and brokerage clients, you need to work with this data. This is going to serve you. And then we're not using data to serve ourselves.
Typical. We're all too busy to do our own jobs, right?
And I know it's not fun, guys, but it's, once you get those workflows, those systems and data sets and those workflows in place, your dashboards created, then you can like look at your data in real time. You can appease your C-suite, you can appease your investors and stakeholders, and you can make really intelligent and strategic choices, you know? So like looking back at our, you know, those knee-jerk reactions, you're not going to make knee-jerk reactions because you have quantitative, intelligent data that's going to help guide you with your decisions.
And we left earlier, but it's true. Usually CFOs and CMOs are not the best of friends. This is a way to pull them back over to your side because they recognize that you're looking at this in a financial context. And many of them don't think us marketing types do that. They think we're just all creatives. Like, no. We actually do. We care about money. It's all good. Anyway.
And yeah, so just think about, you know, how you're right, how your products and services and how you're creating you know, strength and connection and understanding and transparency and visibility into the operating, you know, the operations of the people that you serve, right? Your agents, your brokers, your MLS partners, you need to serve internally within your company in a similar mindset. So Marilyn, this is a big one, fatal flaw number 4, the vendor versus the partner mentality. And I know we've touched on a lot of different points on this, but you know, this is a really big one. And a lot of the questions, you know, we've got people saying, you know, why is it so hard for MLS and associations to make decisions? You know, what are the primary driving forces behind getting them to adopt new technology? You know, how companies, you know, they're struggling with agent adoption and things like that. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if we could just get rid of the word vendor, I think everyone in this room would probably be like, just make it go away. At Reso, actually, they make a very conscious effort to call it technology company, not vendor. So we'll wipe it out, but for this purpose, we wanted it here, right? But it really is true. It's like you really need to sit in the seat of the company that you're serving and understand every single component where you can help them win in general, but especially as it relates to your product, right? So I hear many times, I'll pick on MLSs for a second, you know, they launch a product, they do an email blast, maybe do a webinar or two, throw it out there, and then it just sits there. And then 2 years later, like, why didn't anybody adopt it? Well, we can blame the MLSs, but I'm gonna throw the onus back on us as vendors, right? Did we help them? Did we truly partner with them to help them? Did we integrate into every marketing channel that they had? Did we work with them on orchestrated? And obviously we're not the only thing they're going to talk about. So it's got to be orchestrated through their overall editorial calendar. Did we really help their trainers understand that core why, the core benefit that Bondilyn was talking about, and make sure that they start with that? Did we even feed them a full training program that's already built they can just take? Because, you know, MLSs have way too many things to do. So do associations, and brokers are even worse. They have 10 million things to do. So did we really think about it from their perspective? What is every single way we can support them to make sure that what we know is the really important message and the real power that our product offers, that it can get driven through from the decision makers, we'll talk about that in a minute, to the people that actually run the company, to those that are inside the company, and to those, in some cases, some of your products need to even talk to consumers, right? And how consumers can benefit from it. So it's really not a one and done. And I know it's not easy to do this. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. Because the people on the other side receiving this information are very busy. You know, broker marketing people are over the top busy. They don't have any time to breathe. MLS marketing people, if they have one, they're also over the top, right? They don't have the time, but we have to find the way to forge those relationships and truly sit in their seat and do whatever we can do to help it be successful in the way they like to talk to their customer. That's the other thing. It can't be like, well, here's our kit and have a good time. Like, no, I don't use email blasts. I use social media. So you got to give me that, right? It's got to all be customized and almost like a very flexible toolkit, if you will, and one that you support them on and execute as much of it as they will possibly allow you to do, right? The more they trust you that you're not going to do things. Here's another key, and this is one to definitely not do. I'm speaking on MLSs here, and brokers probably feel the same way. A lot of relationships with an MLS will say, we will promote your product for you through our channels, right? So do not go around them. And do not ignore that and go do it on your own. and then bombard, because sooner or later, some agent or broker that's part of that leadership team is going to come back and go, why are they promoting this directly? And you're going to be dead in the water. People do this all the time. It seems easier at some level, and sometimes it is, because frankly, some MLSs are too busy to help you, but do not do that. That's fatal flaw number 6.4. Do not do that. That is going to get you in trouble.
Yeah, 100%. And, Marilyn, I like what you're talking about, right? When we think back at that customer journey and that graphic that we showed you earlier, I think it's very, very important when you are walking into an MLS or an association or brokerage, you need to be able to demonstrate how you are going to service their community right from the beginning all the way through the end. And, tech companies in the space, they get a bad rap. They're kind of like the bane of existence. And it's because so many times we go in with the sell mentality. And once we've made that sale, you walk away, and then you leave, your partner standing there holding the bag, or you're relying on them to continue to tell your story or to support your product and platform or coach and train on it. And I think you really need to have a very, very thoughtful and comprehensive program in place and be able to demonstrate that. The question, why does it take so long, to adopt new technology? We all know onboarding a new client, into technology and driving agent adoption is a big and heavy and time consuming lift. And you have to do the bulk of that work, and you have to demonstrate that you're going to do the bulk of that work for them. And another thing I want to point out too is, there's a lot of tech companies that come and go from the space. Real estate is a big, giant market, but yet when you really look at like the tech community, it's pretty small and it's pretty intimate. And, MLS and associations and brokers, if they're going to align with you and endorse and take that time and energy to go through the adoption process with you, they want to know that you have sticking and staying power, and that really you are there to stand side by side with them as a partner and help solve and continue to solve for fundamental challenges and grow and evolve together. And I think, what we're seeing right now and what we've seen recently is there's a lot of, acquisition of companies, a lot of mergers, and what happens is that ends up compromising your product roadmap. It compromises your support services. You as a leader of an organization, are cutting costs and working to appease your investors and stakeholders. And that ends up becoming more important than the clients and the partners and the people that you're servicing. And this is really why a lot of these organizations are very slow to adopt and support, because they get left holding the bag and they look bad because they just stood up there, for the last 90 days, singing your praises and encouraging your adoption, and then you left them holding the bag. So you really have to think through that entire life cycle, and a long-term journey and partnership with everyone that you're serving.
Yeah, we just did a broker technology survey. It's on the WAV Group website if anybody wants to download it. And one of the number one things brokers complained about with their tech companies is that they get a little, as they say, too far over their skis. They promised all these features, they promised all these upgrades, and nothing came through. The other one they get really mad about, and I know there's some of you on the call that you can relate to this, is do not promise an API if you don't really have one. And do not promise an API if you really don't integrate with people that you say you do. These are two fatal flaws that will kill you in the long run. Anyway, go for it.
Yeah, the concept of selling vaporware.
Yes, no vaporware, please. Vaporware free zone.
And I love this little chart here, because there's obviously the transactional relationship and all of that, but we really have to be open and transparent. We have to build trust and loyalty. We have to listen and grow, and to our clients, to our MLS and association partners. I mean, how many of you actually just have a touch base once a month or once a quarter, with these big clients you worked so hard to land, just to understand, how are things going? How are things going from our standpoint? How are things going from your standpoint? How can we continue to serve you? How can we be more efficient and effective? And I think that listening is something that we have a tendency not to do. We're just so focused on getting that home run and getting across that initial finish line of the sale, that we really don't focus on what happens after the sale. So it's just super, super common. So we have about 10 minutes left. We've got a bunch of questions. Marilyn, I'm going to take a moment and just sort through the questions and kind of come up with a strategy. Why don't you talk a little bit just about, WAV Group, RE Technology, and how we work with our audience.
WAV Group, many of you know us in different contexts, but it relates to helping craft a story, tell a story, drive home a story, drive home adoption, drive home engagement, keep clients retained with you for a long period of time. We really have a lot of different ways we can help you with that. So everything from, strategic planning, and that can be marketing strategic planning or overall corporate strategic planning. We have a WAV Group Communications, a public relations division headed up by Kevin Hawkins, who does, I would argue, probably the best PR in real estate out there. And he's really good at getting coverage on, new launches of things. Of course, if you have a brand new category entrant, you're creating some, complete new innovation. We love to talk about that. Marketing agency, which we talked about, that Bondilyn's heading up for us, and she helps agents, she helps brokers, she helps MLSs, she helps associations, and she helps technology companies tell their stories in different ways. We have product management too. There's sometimes where companies really need a better feel for product roadmap. Where should they go? Why should they go? Who should they be targeting? Is it agents, brokers, somebody else? And research helps a lot with that. We do a lot of market research. We talk to consumers, we talk to agents and brokers to really understand what's going on, not only to help you better understand the market, but also to position you as a thought leader, right? So if you take the time to do consistent research on a particular topic, it can position you as a thought leader and can help get attention. Obviously, we do technology, we do a lot of that, and then recruiting. So if you need a CMO, whether you need a fractional CMO and someone like Bondilyn, or you need somebody full-time, we can help you with that. And then we have a quarterly session we call the Waves of Change, which is a great webinar. And that's not really a marketing piece per se. It's a place where we talk about new trends and things. But if you do have something exciting and new, definitely make sure that you let WAV Group know, because it may be something we can talk about on one of those sessions. And then RE Technology, the company I mentioned earlier, we started this really in partnership with MLSs, because what we found was every one of them wanted to provide technology education, and the thought of curating daily educational content about technology is a daunting task at best, even for us, but for everyone, it was crazy. So we created this so there could be daily educational articles, webinars, and a whole bunch of different things out there to help people understand how to leverage technology in their business, so that agents ultimately and brokers can better serve the clients who frankly expect technology these days, right? We could argue there may be an interest and or skill gap between our core audience within the industry and those that we serve. So that was the main reason for that. So there's all different channels there. You can talk to agents, brokers, MLSs, associations, and tell your story, as long as it's truly educational. Back to Bondilyn's point, we don't do pitch, because nobody cares and no one's going to listen to you, but we can help you tell stories. And especially if you want to do something on an ongoing basis, we can be really helpful for that too.
Awesome.
I'd love to talk to you about it.
Okay, ready, Marilyn? We've got a lot of questions.
Yeah, let's throw them out there. Let's go.
Okay, so the first one, I think this is a good one to start with. So somebody posed the question about what, they'd like to have a better understanding of the relationship between the MLS and association and the brokerage, and how those two work together, and is there monetization models that exist between them. So I'm assuming this is one of our tech partners who is like, okay, I'm selling to these audiences. How do I better speak if I'm walking into an MLS or association or into a brokerage? How do I best speak to the relationship between the MLS and association and the brokerage?
We could do a whole webinar. In fact, we could do a whole webinar just on that topic. That's a deep one. Whoever asked that question, reach out to us afterward, and we're happy to talk to you in more depth. But I hate to say it depends. I hate when people say that, but it kind of does. But I would say, suffice it to say that associations and MLSs are looking for ways to support their audience in a way that helps everyone, right? That doesn't necessarily create an unfair advantage for one group over another, that it's really designed to help everyone. And MLS consumer websites, as an example, right? It's a great way to demonstrate and generate listing exposure and lead activity for everybody that's in the marketplace. So that's an example. Brokers and MLSs tend to certainly brokers work with MLSs, but they tend to each have their own tech stacks, right? Brokers do their thing, MLSs do their thing. And one of our big opportunities, frankly, is to help connect the dots between the two, to help brokers understand that they don't always have to own everything, that they can work with their MLSs to leverage a lot of the great tools that are offered and what I would argue relatively or very affordable monthly subscriptions in most cases, right? So they are different. They do generally make technology decisions separately from one another. There are times when an MLS might offer the basic version of something, and then there's an upsell path where a brokerage can buy it from the vendor, but also really through the MLS because they're part of that relationship. So there's a lot of those sort of basic advanced types of products that go on. But for the most part, they really are two separate sales channels and two separate places for agents and brokers to leverage technology.
Yeah, I just want to add, thinking about monetization, like as a tech partner going in and, negotiating with MLS and associations, there's a lot of different ways that you guys can structure your relationship and partnership together. And, a lot of MLS and associations are looking for opportunities for like non-due or, non-dues revenue. That was hard to get out, non-dues revenue, and so there's interesting ways that you can explore, creating rev share models and different things like that. And at the brokerage level too, something that I have been working with a lot of brokerages on over the, kind of over this sort of pandemic, landscape that we've been dealing with the last few years, is really looking at how do you expand, your ancillary products and services, and how do you create diversification in that brokerage's business portfolio. So not all of their eggs are over in one basket. And so, as a tech partner, how can you come in and help and service them in a lot of those initiatives? So just some interesting things to think about there. We're going to run a little bit over. If people have to drop off at the top of the hour, we are going to distribute a recording. You can go and look at the Q&A or reach out to Marilyn and I directly, but we're going to keep going. If for anybody that wants to stay on, we're going to keep addressing some of these questions for probably another 5 or 10 minutes if you guys can hang on. Marilyn, I'm going to take this next one. So somebody put a challenge on that they're dealing with. They said the decision makers at the MLS level don't always seem to understand the technology that is being presented and understand, the worth of it to their company. And I think this really goes back to the conversations, right? The flaws that we've been talking about. Like when you are working with the MLS partner and you're speaking to their brokers and their agents, I think that if there is a disconnect in how your technology fundamentally serves them, that's in that storytelling piece. Are you going in with a bullet point list of all of the different things that you do, but not helping them understand how that connects into their day-to-day, productivity, how it helps them streamline, consolidate, whatever that case is. You need to, connect those dots, and you need to do it in a really simple way. And so, my thought is if you are having trouble helping them understand, you're overcomplicating your story, and you need to take a step back and look at what are we fundamentally solving for, and how do we tell that story to that audience in a really simplistic and stripped down way.
And what you mentioned is something that I've seen happen too. Part of that, for any of you that are on it that are from MLSs, part of that is training the responsibilities of the board of directors, that they are really supposed to take their company hat off and put their MLS hat on. We know that doesn't always happen, but again, to tell that story, you got to recognize that may happen, and you still have to be able to balance those two topics. It's not an easy one, but it does happen. You're right, Miguel.
Yeah. Okay. So next, and Marilyn, I'll lob this out to you. Okay. Somebody's asking for us to address the fundamental challenges of, they use the word vendor. So they're a vendor.
Okay.
They're like, oh, let me go back and edit that. No, but can you address the fundamental challenges that vendors face when they're selling low cost services across MLSs, but use a model that is direct to members? So they give an example. They say IDX vendors aren't usually selling to the MLS, but rely on a partnership with the MLS for things like IDX.
Yeah, so some people, Jeff, yeah, some people call that a fishing license. Have you heard that expression, right? So you get access to be able to sell in a market, but you don't get any support from the MLS in order to do that. And I think that's what you're describing, right? And that happens a lot with IDX vendors. There's many of them that are authorized, but the MLS hasn't leaned in to say, I'm going to support these 5 in more aggressive ways. So that does get much more difficult. I mean, ideally, I've seen where when people get those sort of licenses is they do get the ability to promote directly to the member, not through the MLS per se, but they have the permission to do that. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, if you go around them too many times and you don't have permission, you'll get in trouble. But it's probably, to your point, it's my least favorite model because of those challenges. There's a lot of people, your IDX is the best example, right? You're competing against a lot of people. Some MLSs have like directories, some don't. And by the way, if for anybody that is, make sure you put your product into RE Technology because it's free. That is one place to get exposure. But ideally, if you can get a more fundamental relationship with the MLS, you're better off than trying to get those fishing licenses. It makes it much more difficult to break through. And again, if you do try to get the permission for you to be able to promote directly, if you get access to the database of those that are in the MLS, it makes it a lot easier to break through. But it's not, you guys are hitting on some of the toughest challenges for sure.
Yeah, well, that's something too that we face, like, with tech companies going into like, large franchise affiliations, right, into the partner programs. And so I don't say fishing license, I call it a hunting license, but, you have this, right? So suddenly, you're inside, of this affiliate program and they're like, okay, well, there you go, and you're sort of standing back there going, oh my God, it's all on me now, and a lot of those have these pay to play models. And so you have to start delivering ROI against those. And it can be really challenging. And I like what you said, Marilyn, that goes back to our idea about, are you just a vendor that is in there, showing up at their trade shows and doing the bare minimum? Or are you a true partner who is aligning with them, who's having regular conversations, who's providing additional value, to that organization, and really making sure that you're at that top of mind at all times. And that is definitely a challenge, but it's a worthwhile challenge. And if you can particularly tie that back to direct ROI, you can support those kinds of decisions too.
Okay, well, we're at the top of the hour. I have another meeting. I'm sure many of you do too. So thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. If you need any help with any of these things, there's our contact information. Reach out to any of us, and we're happy to answer more of your questions and see if there's any ways we might be able to help you out in the future. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Take care.
Okay, bye.